Well, we are a number of people, and we are sitting here quietly. That seems like an indication we should begin. We gather in this space for worship. In this moment, we're gathering here to check in with each other and to make some important decisions in the ongoing life of the congregation. In some ways, the same spirit of listening for God is a part of this meeting as well. And to begin us toward listening for God, Ruth Nally is going to open with prayer.
I was reminded today that I had agreed to do the invocation for today's meeting. Turning to ChatGPT, an artificial intelligence program which creates prose from collective human expressions, I typed in invocations with the word shepherd. And ChatGPT says, these invocations incorporate the idea of God as a shepherd, a common metaphor in many religious traditions, representing guidance, care, and protection. One of the invocations was this: Lord, you are our shepherd, and we are your flock. Lead us with your love, and may we always follow your path of righteousness. This is one of the expressions from collective human consciousness. Amen.
We will just take a moment to look over the agenda and make sure that this doesn't have any omission or mistake other than one that I will mention when we come to it. And if it looks right to you, then we're going to approve it. Is there a motion to do that? Okay, Dean, and a second, and Maryland, okay. Any further discussion?
Who's the second?
Maryland Keyfever. Okay, so those in favor of this agenda for this meeting, please raise your hand. Those opposed, raise your hand. Then this is the agenda we're using. We met in the spring for council, and the minutes of that meeting are now needing to be approved as being correct for that meeting. And Amy, do you have anything to say about that?
I just want to say that I'll be correcting the spelling of Brian Cresswich and Luann Harley.
Any other comments, questions on the minutes of our last meeting? Then a motion to adopt them would be in order. And is there a second to that motion? Okay. No. Yes. All right. Those in favor of approving the minutes of our previous meeting, please raise your hand. Those opposed, same thing. Okay, those minutes stand as the record of our meeting in the spring. Now we're going to hear from our treasurer in terms of where our finances stand at this point. Thanks.
Included in your packet, you will find the Treasurer's Report for July 31st, 2023. For those of you that are not aware, we have outsourced our accounting function, and because of that, we have a little bit of a timing lag. So that's why, although it is October today, we are looking at financials currently just through July 31st. We have cash available at the Bippa State Bank as our main checking account of $186,000, Crossroads Bank of almost $40,000, the Sing Me Home Festival cash account had over $8,000, petty cash of $200, and our investments at Ader Financial are $464,000, giving us total cash and marketable securities of $699,000. We have accounts payable and commitments of $1,410. Notes payable, which you may remember is our loans for the solar panels, is down to $18,000. We are down to one remaining payment next summer. And temporarily restricted funds of $464,000, leaving us with available cash of $215,413. We calculate a cash reserve ratio from that, which was 3.49. Our goal is always to be above 3 months there, so we were looking good at this point in time. An update on contributions. Our unrestricted contributions through July were $365,000. We have a projection based on history that rolls that forward, that we would project maybe coming in around $653,000. Our actual expenses from budget lines were $391,459. That's 53% of our annual budget through July 31st. And if we took a true month-by-month average, through July we would be at 58%. So we were a little ahead of budget expense-wise. So our expenses exceeded contributions by $25,772, but we have other income, predominantly from market gains, giving us $57,000 there, so we end with net income of $31,262. This is the financial report I present to you. Thank you.
Are there questions? Yes, go ahead. Tina's going to bring you the mic, so wait for her so that everyone can hear you.
I was wondering if there's a breakdown any place of the temporarily restricted funds?
The board reviews that monthly. I can speak to that to you if you have specific questions.
I just wondered if there was a list someplace. It'd be interesting to see that.
Okay.
My husband is the financial wizard in our family. Well, he notices things I didn't because I didn't really look at it. Why did we move all funds out of Indiana Lawrence? Am I right? We don't have any funds in Indiana Lawrence anymore?
Well, Indiana Lawrence doesn't exist, but First Financial Bank.
Well, yeah. You knew what I meant.
You are correct. Our main bank that we use is Bippus State Bank, and that change happened before my time, so I can't answer why.
Other questions? Okay, then, was this adopted by the board? Okay, this comes from the board, so it's already a supported motion. Those in favor, please say aye. And those opposed, say no. Okay, we've accepted this report. And now you'll find the slate of nominees for the next year, 2024. Take a moment to look over it. I'll just give you a quick reminder, and it might be new information for some, how we come to having a slate of nominees. Several years ago, the church tried out the idea of not having elections in which there were at least 2 people nominated for each position, and tried the idea of gathering suggestions from the whole congregation and also from each commission regarding leadership going forward for that commission. We looked at the time and talent surveys, which indicate what people would like to do or be available to do. And then a fairly large group of people including the pastors, the nominating committee, the moderator and assistant moderator, the deacon chair, all gather together and lift up the names they feel led to call to put before the congregation. Those people then are contacted, and if they agree, then their name is on this slate. I won't go into all of the reasons, but this was soon seen to be, or was quickly seen to be, preferable to an election with yes and no. So that's why we have the slate, and that's how it comes to you today. Are there questions at all about this slate of nominees for leadership going forward? Yeah, Mark.
Just a correction of Ann's name is with an E, A-N-N-E.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Other corrections or questions? Julie, does the board approve this before it comes to council? Okay, so this also has been approved by the board. So again, it comes as a supported motion. All those who would affirm this list of nominees, this slate of leadership going forward, please say aye. Aye. Those who would not affirm, please say no. Thank you. So we have affirmed those persons to be in those roles going forward. Now we look at the budget, which is the other important decision we're making today. And so, Catherine, would you come back and lead us through the budget and it's the budget for 2024. It might not read that way on your agenda, but it is.
So we have several pages here, but I would ask that you start at the back, because at the bottom, 3 pages into the budget, you will see a budget summary that breaks down by commission their totals. This gives you historical back to 2021. Moving across the page, the 2021 approved budget and actual expenses, 2022 approved budget and actual expenses, the 2023 approved budget, actual expenses through June, which was what I had when we did the budget workshop, so that's the numbers that are there. And then 2024 proposed budget and the increase or decrease from 24 to 23. So those are the columns you're looking at across. And we have the budget summary by commission. And then if you flip the page, you get the last couple and the total. So the total 2024 budget that is being proposed is $745,692. This is an increase of $16,933 from the prior year. That comes out to a 2.32% increase overall. Going back, I'll speak through each of the commissions briefly. The executive board budget was just decreased a tiny bit. PMPC is where you'll see a lot of our changes, although it's not completely reflected here in the increase or decrease. So PMPC is where we have all the salaries for our staff, and you may remember that there was a cost of living increase from the denomination of 5.3% this year. We also moved from PMPC the funds needed for the accounting function. So previously that was an employed position paid through PMPC, but now it is an outsourced function of Stewardship Commission. So the increase in stewardship's budget, if you flip on the next page, of $18,000 came out of PMPC's line in 2023 and was moved down there. So that's part of that change. That's why that change in PMPC this year doesn't look that large, but it really does include a larger change. Education Commission had a small increase, especially materials from Brethren Press and others. The costs have gone up, so they increased their funds there. Nurture Commission and Fellowship Commission unchanged. Witness Commission, a small increase that came at the direction of the board. Property Commission has an overall decrease this year. And stewardship, as we talked about, that increase because of moving the accounting function there, and then just a small change in the deacon body funds. If you go back up, you can see the details line by line of each of those commissions. I would ask for what questions you have.
That's the basic overview of the budget. And any part of the budget is open for your questions and comments, but I appreciate leading us through the summary first. That's where the most of the information is. Now, there likely are questions, and those are welcome at this time. If you have comments, let's hold those for now and just ask questions to understand, questions for clarification. It can go either way.
I noticed under Pastoral Ministry Personnel Commission, and there's probably a good explanation, maybe I missed it. There's a custodian line, 5246, and it's blank for 2024 proposed.
That's a great question, Gary. Thank you. I did not go line by line through positions. Sorry. So you will see the fourth one down was church administrator. That was Jan's position. And when she retired, we split that position, outsourcing the accounting functions and creating the facility manager position, which took duties from the former custodial position. So that is why 2024 is blank for church administrator and custodian. Those wages were folded into the facility manager position and then to help fund outsourcing the accounting.
Then Marilyn has a question.
In terms of pastor, I presume that's a kind of a guess what it will be next year. Is that right? Because Gwen will be our pastor for 1 year, right, through July 31st. Is that right? And then we don't know who our pastor will be.
Well, Gwen's contract was thankfully made to be a little flexible, so she agreed to a 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
To give us some flexibility as we work through this process. The number that was used here for the budget does use Gwen's salary for the full year. That would take us to the end of her 18-month contract, but also puts in a number so that we have some sort of baseline to start as we're estimating out to whatever a new pastor's salary might be. But we don't know exactly where that would fall.
Okay, thank you.
I've been a part of a lot of different organizations, some church-related, some the church, some unrelated, and I always feel it's not a good sign if nobody asks any questions about the budget. So I'm glad that you are. Go ahead.
So Tim Turflinger is our custodian. You were talking about that facilities manager. Does he also do that?
Tim is our facilities manager.
Okay, well, I wasn't clear on that.
Others? Anything you want to understand or have clarified?
So who is our technical staff? I see that's listed, and I don't know what that means.
Sue, do you want to help me on that?
There is a line item. Okay.
Our technical staff includes all of the folks who have been part of the IT kind of things that Randy, Zach.
The sound booth.
The sound booth, thank you. And so they have declined being paid. So we did build that into our budget, but they are bringing youth on board to help, and those youth are being paid a nominal amount. So that's where some of the money is coming out of. It's wonderful. It's a good opportunity for them to serve.
Other things, questions or comments? Any discussion that you want about the budget? Well, is there, oh, good, okay.
I may have missed this, but Catherine, you mentioned in Witness that there was a board-directed addition to the Witness. Can you talk about what that was?
Yeah, so specifically, that line is 5523, the Ministry Excellence Program, part of the South Central Indiana District. So we added that to the Witness budget as a board action. There was also some other minor shifting in their funds. They wanted to increase their contingency funds so that we have money available for hands-on witness opportunities and things that come up throughout the year. They wanted to already have some money ready for that so that they didn't always have to come to you and ask to fund a project last minute, but to have some funds built in to use for hands-on ministry.
So in the past, the Ministry in Excellence has been part of PMPC. So is it taken out of PMPC and then put?
This is not that part. This is different. This is supporting that program as a whole, not our specific participation for our pastors, but supporting the project for the district as a whole.
And over here's one.
I'm sorry, this isn't a question. I wanted to just fill out a little more information in case people aren't aware that the Ministry Excellence Project does more than pastor appreciation. It also provides funds for pastors that maybe have unexpected medical expenses or need support for education. And so they're trying to build up their funding for that. And so that's what we're giving to.
Thank you, Rachel.
I see in the outreach for local neighborhood that Manchester Early Learning Center, that budget is being decreased by $1,000. Is there an explanation for decreasing that?
Seth, I don't see Nan here today. Do you want to speak to that at all from the witness? The decision to decrease the MELC funding? Thank you.
I believe that that line item was one of maybe two items that were shifted slightly to make room for a kind of the hands-on service project kind of opportunity that Witness was talking about. So I think there were two places where the money that Catherine was talking about, I think in the, is it labeled contingency fund? Mm-hmm. Yeah, came from. So that's one of the places where that money was shifted.
I have a similar question about line 5522. I noticed that the amount has remained the same for the South Central District for the last 3 years, but a $1,000 reduction is proposed for 24. I'd be interested in comments about that.
think the same discussion. Witness was looking to find a little bit of money to shift, and given financial situations in the district, which have changed, given the sale of a building, there was some consideration that the district is in solid financial footing and that there was room to remove $1,000 from those givings. Julie, would you add anything to that? Okay.
Other comments or questions?
This is a matter of just curiosity on my part. Where did we get the money for all the paper to do the cranes? That was a lot.
I believe that came from office supplies, but I would have to look specifically at the receipts to confirm.
I don't know whether this is permitted, or I would like to see that Manchester Early Learning Center upped by 1,000, so it goes back to the same amount. Is that something that happens today, or how is that handled?
Gary, let me make sure I hear what you're saying. You're proposing that the MELC be restored to the same amount as last year?
Yes.
You can make it as a motion to amend the budget. Otherwise, it simply is heard as a concern or a suggestion. It wouldn't affect the 2024 budget unless it's amended.
Well, I would like to move that we keep that amount the same as this year, 8550. Yeah.
It isn't on the floor yet. Your motion is to continue MELC at the funding level as last year, which would add $1,000 to the budget. Is that correct? Is there a second for that motion? And there is. Okay.
Joyce Stifler.
Okay, then that is what we're talking about at this moment, is the amendment.
I raise money every day for MELC and the work of early childhood in the community, and I wouldn't turn down $1,000 from the church. But you should know that MELC, along with 3 other large childcare programs in the county, are being significantly supported by the Community Foundation. They are raising $2 million to support increased wages so that childcare workers will make a floor of $15 an hour. And then there will be a request that those childcare centers raise their fees, because in any business model you have to have fee revenue that will cover the cost of your operation, and they're not doing that now. So they're in the process of working up a new fee schedule. Knowing that many families won't be able to afford increases, the Community Foundation comes in with a second large gift to each of those programs to subsidize families who don't qualify for vouchers. They aren't that poor, but they have financial need. So we would welcome a gift to that campaign also, but I think they will not be very adversely affected by the loss of that. But vote as you wish.
Other questions or comments on the amendment?
As the previous chair of Witness, I can say that we have looked at the overall budget of Witness and seen that MELC is a very large portion of the local contributions that we were making. And we had looked at it in the past as well and thought it seemed to be out of balance with some of the other things that we were doing. And I know that a lot of the emphasis was made originally when they had their building campaign on and when the youth were a big part of that. And the previous commission that I was part of, we were looking at ways to encourage them to focus more on their own fundraising rather than depending on what seemed to be an out of balance contribution from our church. So this was not out of the blue.
Others who want to speak to the amendment?
Okay, this is how I have it. Gary proposed that the MALC budget be restored to last year's numbers to add $1,000 back into the budget.
Those in favor of that amendment, please raise your hand. Those opposed to that amendment, please raise your hand. Okay, then that amendment is not passed. But in the process, we learned some more information. Are there other comments or questions about the budget as a whole? Then, let's adopt or consider the budget as a whole. Those in favor of this budget for the coming calendar year, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those opposed? Thank you. Okay, that has been adopted. That is the budget that describes our intentions for this coming year in financial terms. Thank you, Catherine. Now we'll hear some reports, and it is often good news to hear these reports. We'll begin with the report from the Executive Board. Or you can, why don't you go?
Every 6 months between council meetings seems like a busy season. And I know each one can't be successively more busy than the last one, but this last 6 months has felt exceptionally busy. But truly, we are a priesthood of believers and have worked together gracefully to shift responsibilities on a number of occasions, have send-offs and welcomings, and it feels that we have maintained a steady and a faithful witness. Picking up where we left off last spring, you'll remember that a series of things happened in a sort of domino way. Karen Turflinger decided to retire as our custodian. That position was subsequently changed and expanded from custodian to facilities manager, to your point, Joy, and was filled by Tim Turflinger, who took on all of Karen's work and some of Jan's facility work, such as working with vendors. Then Jan Foz announced her retirement as treasurer and church administrator. Her responsibilities were reconfigured, giving a variety of people new responsibilities. Accounting and payroll have been managed through a contract with the accounting firm Himes and Krall. Catherine Haff became the treasurer, and as such provides monthly financial reports to the board, prepares budgets, and works with the Stewardship Commission to manage the financial activities of the church. Since Catherine was called to the role of treasurer, we needed someone to fill her position as Fellowship Commission chair, which is now being handled ably by Marilyn Groves until the end of the year. Thanks, Marilyn, for stepping into that. Also, Kurt made his decision to resign, allowing 5 months for us to adjust to the end of our long relationship and plan for new relationships and new leadership. The executive board is responsible for appointing an interim. So we had a search process, but it's not the same as the search for a permanent settled pastor. And after more than a month of making contacts and with potential candidates, the transition team brought the name of Gwen Gustafson Zook to the executive board for approval, and here we are. The transition team and pastors took up that preliminary work of challenging our thinking about the future. The weekly routine of thinking and dreaming and jotting down notes is not, as Gwen will say, a strategic plan process. It's not anything like a formal process. It's an exercise to stimulate our thinking, giving us permission to think expansively about who we are and what we're about, without the burden of feeling we need to uphold the past only and recreate it. Pastors have organized the comments that are on the colored paper and are nearly ready to reflect back to the congregation the whole body of ideas that you generated for those weeks. They'll continue to lead us in this kind of transitional thinking. The other major activity of the transition is to begin planning for a search committee for a settled pastor. We hope to have a committee together by the end of the year, early next year, but I want to emphasize that the transition work and the search work, while they are very much related, are not really sequential. We are beginning the work of creating our congregational profile, that is a document that sort of describes who we are, and which will be shared out among pastors who are looking for positions. So we are in the process of doing that and inviting the district executive to join us in that work. But we are not waiting until all transition work is done and finished before we begin thinking about new leadership. So we are not hiring a pastor to execute a set of projects that we've outlined on papers. We are employing a pastoral team that can equip us to carry out the things we want to do. So the role of the pastor is a little different than simply executing programs. This is a person who will empower us to do the work of the church. We are, in other items of business, we are we have just finished giving support and oversight to the Sing Me Home Festival. We created the slate in the budget that you just approved. We made a tithe from the Dwight and Helen Faringer estate to Science Olympiad at the school. You know, this is a sort of a club competition activity, interscholastic competition for students in the sciences and STEM fields. And so I think Dwight and Helen would be delighted to know that their estate supported that, and our number of youth who are involved in that program. We hosted the installation of Laura Stone from our congregation as the South Central District Executive Minister. We said farewell to Kathy Garber as director of the Peace Patch Preschool and approved Ashley Bradford as the new director of Peace Patch. She continues as both the director of the whole program and the teacher of the 4-year-old children. To do that, the board changed the policy that required the Peace Patch preschool director to be a member of the congregation, so that the policy expresses a preference for a member of the congregation. But it was continually more and more difficult to find a member of the congregation who could do that work. So we have a preference for that, but not a requirement. We want to also, and we did give our thanks to Wendy Urbaugh for 2 years as teacher of the 3-year-olds at Peace Patch, and approved the appointment of Caitlin Holloway as the 3-year-old teacher. She was a dedicated parent while her children were going through the program, and she's now leading that 3-year-old group. We have recruited Steve and Lila Hammer to jointly serve as financial secretaries for the congregation, replacing Jeff Hunn. So we get to see you quarterly with envelopes, and thank you for that, stepping into that. We moved the supervisory role of the facilities manager, which Kurt had been doing, but it seemed to fall more easily into the property commission chair's responsibilities. So Mel is taking some supervisory role with Tim Turflinger. We gave Seth and Amy the ability to use pastoral assistance budget to support some small expenses for Raymond Johnson. And you'll also be interested to know that we have commissioned Kurt Borgman, and we should probably solidify this as a congregation, but we've commissioned Kurt Borgman to make 2 visits to Raymond in the possible last year of his life, and to be in attendance at Raymond's execution by his request as his pastor, unless, of course, he would receive a stay of execution, which is what we pray for. So Kurt very much wanted to remain involved in that, and we want him to be our representative for that work. With PMPC, we appointed the ad hoc committee that planned the celebration for Kurt and Lois and their family. And I'll have you know that I was able to edit the word cloud. I have 2 versions for Kurt. One has the word bald in the center, as having been typed in the most number of times, and one without. So he can have his choice, or both. We made changes to our Brotherhood Mutual property insurance policy to lower costs by increasing the deductible. Those costs, like others, are going up. We approved the budget that is 2%, a little more than 2% higher than last year, largely in personnel and accounting costs, both of which we felt were essential to our ministries. We also approved a motion to include limited hospitality expense as reimbursable expenses for pastors. They are occasionally meeting with someone inside or outside the congregation, offering to buy them coffee or take them out for a meal, and they have been paying that out of their own pocket. So we made a little bit of money available in the budget to help them cover some of that hospitality expense. The board approved participation in the Ministry Excellence Project, again, for our congregation, and also committed to making a contribution to the ongoing work of the district in Ministry Excellence, where we can help a congregation that is not so well-resourced as ours to afford to help a pastor. So we were glad to be able to do that. Let's see. In the last month, just the last month, we renewed an emergency shelter agreement with Manchester University. So if the university has an emergency, the church can be used as a sort of evacuation site and a reunification site for all students, staff, and faculty. We had signed that agreement several years ago, and it was time to renew it. And finally, we approved recently the replacement of one of our geothermal units. We have 17 geothermal units in the church building. One has already been replaced. The one that needs to be replaced is probably the most expensive transition because of its location. It is in the attic space up above the nursery rooms and the preschool rooms. Have most of you been up there? Did you know we had an attic? It's a very large, heavy piece of equipment, and you have to make a couple of right-hand turns to get up there. If they have to widen the doorway a little bit to get it in there, it will have more cost than the usual geothermal unit. So after this one is replaced, we just have 15 more to go over time. And I don't know, Mel, those have a life of 20 years? Yeah. Yeah. did you hear that? Mel said those units have about a 15-year life, and if you get beyond that, you're lucky. We're at 23. So energy is just one of our ongoing costs. We do like heat and air conditioning. Our commissions are working hard to manage hundreds of tasks. As we move along in this transition period, we are continually asking which tasks should we maintain, which should we prune away, and which should we take up in a new way. Thanks to this priesthood of believers for helping in a million ways, we are making this an engaging and welcoming and worshipful place. Special thanks to our commission chairs and commissions for the many hours of work that they do on our behalf. Thank you. I'll take questions if you have them.
Yes. What questions do you have? Tina, there's one in the middle. You're reaching there. Go ahead.
Thank you. What difference has the solar panels made in our electric bills?
Well, in our electric bills, I think we used to pay about $2,400 a month, I believe. And now we're paying $12,000. Sometimes we're getting credit. So that cost has gone down. We are paying for the unit, for the solar system. So if you parse that out over the cost of the system, you might say we're paying, we have budgeted for the system $12,000 a year? $24,000 a year. So we're swapping out the cost of energy for the cost of the system. Yeah, we still have a connection to Duke Energy, and we pay about $30 a month just for that connection. Does that answer your question?
This is your troublemaker Joy again. Is the system itself, especially for those who loaned us money, is that all paid for yet?
There is one payment yet to be made to someone who loaned a gift for the system. And that will be paid in the 24 budget, out of the 24 budget. Ron? Uh-oh, now you're getting out of my league. When we installed the system, they said that it had a potential life of 50 years, but after 35 years, it begins to lose efficiency. So we have another 30 years before we lose efficiency. Who knows what solar energy will look like in 30 years?
Any other questions about the work of the Executive Board? Thank you, Julie, and to all the board members. We will accept these reports all with staff and all reports at one time. From District Conference, we had 5 representatives there. Marilyn is going to make a report, which was assisted by a couple of the other members of the group that are delegates.
Actually, I'm mostly just going to read this report, which Seth so helpfully wrote for us, maybe add a couple of things. The 2023 South Central Indiana District Conference was held in Kokomo, Indiana on August 19th. Usually it's in September, but because of all the stuff going on in September, they moved it to August 19th. And we did not meet at the Kokomo Church, which we've done in the past. It was a rental facility, and I cannot remember what it's called. I don't know if any of you, it was a very nice facility, and it worked really well for our conference. A pre-conference program took place on August 18th, beginning with a panel presentation about ministry in small churches. followed by a concert from Friends with the Weather. Our own Katie Gray Brown was part of the panel, with David Hupp, Seth Hendricks, and Chris Good providing the evening music as Friends of the Weather from our congregation. The conference opened with worship and district moderator Mark Stahl, who provided the message on the theme cross-training, which is sort of an interesting dual meaning for cross. Some of you know cross-training has to do with doing several different athletic things, I think, but of course we think of the cross as well. He encouraged us to focus on building up disciples and our own local expressions of the body of Christ. Our delegates are listed in the packet. They were Tina Raymond, Dean Beery. Jim Shively also represented the Camp Mac board, and Seth Hendricks, and myself, Marilyn Kefauver. We gathered around tables for discussion on the agenda throughout the day. It's interesting to me that after quite a number of years ago, when annual conference went to tables, and there was considerable discussion that that would never work. We did it once at annual conference. We will never go back. And many of our district conferences, I don't know about all of them, but many of them, including ours, has gone to tables where we have discussion and get to know each other much better than just sitting in rows. So that's a good thing. Julie Garber was also there as the board chair and sat at a delegate table. There were a number of non-delegates also in attendance from our congregation. Many in leadership positions. Diana Bucher is our district board chair. Eugene Roop is on the ministry credentialing committee. Lois Borgman was there with Ader Financial, and Megan Sarber represented Manchester University. I was pleased to be from Manchester. Laura Stone, of course, from our congregation, is now our district executive, and she was pretty much in charge, and I think she's doing an excellent job as our district executive. I'm pretty sure Audrey Sfay had a role at district conference. I can't exactly remember what she did, but I know she was there and she participated in somewhat in leadership, and of course she was one of our youth. She's not a member of our church presently because she's pastor at Eel River, but I consider that she's one of us, remembering her from all of her time here as a youth. There were 99 people present for district conference. 68 of them were delegates. 24 churches were represented. I don't remember how many churches there are in our district, but there are a lot more than 24. Is that not true? Who knows? Who can tell me how many churches are in our district? 38? Okay. Well, that's fewer than I. So there are a number of churches that do not send delegates to district conference, which is disappointing. Let's see. It was mostly a day of reporting with minimal business. Business did include approving a slate, budget, and operating procedural update for the camp, just to keep a balanced turnover among the terms for the directors. The slate approved Tim Troyer. Many of you know Tim. He worked part-time as our chaplain out at Timbercrest, and he's the pastor at Huntington. So he was nominated, he agreed, to be moderator-elect, I should say. Doug Veal, who's the pastor at Wabash, and Dan Kokensparger, I don't know him, but those were the two appointed to the district board. And two of our youth, Ayla Cashdollar and Cadence Fox, are going to be on the Youth Camp Council. So we have a lot of people from our congregation who are very, very active in the district, and I feel really pleased about that. A few other things. The district is in a positive financial place, which is kind of a change from some years ago. It's the sale of the Greenwood Church property that boosted the financial situation. They've created a new grant and loan program. Our own Sing Me Home ministry received the first grant proposal, and that was approved. The district offering went to the Ministry Excellence Project, which we've talked about a little bit here. And we continue to support that as a congregation. And our new moderator is Bruce Dunk, so he was blessed as moderator for the coming year. We also had one of the fun things at district conference that they've done several times is a pie auction. And there weren't a whole lot of pies. There were a couple of other things, baked things besides pies. But so we were really encouraged to bid a lot and bid high. I think there were 3 pecan pies, and I had my eye on one of them. And I paid $100 for it. Somebody else paid $150 for one of them. And I can't remember what the highest bid was, but somebody paid several $100s for one of the pies or baked goods. And the auction goes to the Brethren Leadership Institute, and it was $1,500, which is quite a lot for the number of pies. There were not a huge amount. Okay. It was wonderful to gather with everyone, to join in worship and witness, enjoy the fellowship that we had that day. So district conference is a good thing to participate in if you can. I'm not sure, it doesn't say here where district conference is going to be next year. Does anybody know? Is it going to, oh, maybe at Camp Mac. Okay. Okay, so that's all I have from district conference. Are there questions or concerns that anybody has about the district or about our district conference? Oh, good. Jim knows more than I do.
Let's just say I know different things. Because of some of the questions that were raised earlier, I wanted to share with you what the cash balance was for the district at the end of June. It was $1,392,470. So at this point, they're in better shape financially than any of us can remember. And I wanted to say a little bit about the grant and loan program. Part of these funds are being set aside to be used by churches for projects that they devise, hopefully around the area of outreach. And there's a committee made up of representatives from each section, the district minister, and the board chair that will administer those funds. So.
Thanks, Jim.
What was the sale of the church property from? Was it a church that closed or a church that had extra property that wasn't being used, or what was the situation there?
It was Greenwood, is that right? And I don't know, who knows about that?
That was a discussion at district conference last year, and it was a downsizing. Do you want to, did someone raise their hand here?
Yes, I was a member there, and they sold the property. It closed. So.
And a part of the story is that was a fairly new congregational start that the district very significantly helped to start. So that's another part of the history.
And where is it? Where is Greenwood?
Just on the south side of Indianapolis.
Oh, Indianapolis, okay.
And the congregation continues to meet. They're meeting as a house church. And they sold their facility to a group that had been renting or using the property, but now they bought it.
Other questions? Thank you, Marilyn.
Okay.
Thank you,
You're
all
welcome.
of the delegates who represented us at district conference. And district conference is always open to everyone, not only those we send as delegates. Now, reports from staff. The staff for the Peace Patch Preschool is not here to report. The printed report you have in your packet. I don't know if anyone from Education Commission wants to give any comments on it. but that report is here in writing. And our treasurer, Catherine, doesn't need to make any more reports today because she has pretty much shown us her work with others as well. Seth, would you like to give us the highlights?
Yeah, as I mentioned in my report, and as it's been articulated as well, it's been definitely a full season these last few months since we last met for a council meeting. And our commissions have been busy in some different ways. I kind of shared a little bit about the different things that the Witness Commission and Fellowship Commission, both of which I sit on, have been up to. And I'll just share a couple of things at the end of some things that those groups are up to moving forward as well. And you've seen the Guess Who's Coming to Dinner sign-ups. This will be your last opportunity when you're leaving there, but it looks like quite a few people have signed up. But a great opportunity. I invite you, if you're looking for ways to seek some new connections, to sign up for that. It was a full season for youth ministry, especially leading up to the summer with a number of fundraisers that you all supported generously, and then a number of experiences that we had been working up to. We went on a service learning trip through the denomination called FaithX Trip to Washington State. Had a group go there of senior high. We had a group, and hopefully many of you have heard their reporting. If not, it's on the YouTube page of the civil rights trip that some of our youth went on, and some advisors, as well as with people from the Laverne Church of the Brethren. We had junior hires go to National Junior High Conference, which was held this year at Juniata College. We had a good number of our youth and young people go to summer camp at either Camp Mack or Camp Friedenswald. Most in my time here, I know when I was a youth, there was quite a large group. We had 13 youth go to Camp Mack this summer. I was served as a counselor and will be the co-director for the camp. So I get to work with the Youth Camp Council, which has several of our youth on it, as was mentioned before. Just obviously this last stretch is significant piece in that Julie had pointed out in our congregational life has been this transition time, and sort of served both on the transition team for bringing Gwen on, as well as a wonderful planning team in putting together the celebration for Kurt and the Borgman family. It was a lot of fun putting those things together and watching that come together. And then also a focus putting the Sing Me Home Festival together that we just had recently here a couple weeks ago. I did want to mention, I was having a conversation with someone who was just asking whether or not all the musicians and the people that participate in the Sing Me Home Festival, whether they did it on a volunteer basis. And I just wanted to make sure that folks know that is definitely not the case. It took a significant amount of planning and work and gifts from many of you in this congregation in a number of different ways, putting that together, whether that was volunteers or whether that was putting together. There'll be some reporting as we work with Catherine to finalize all of those things and numbers that can be shared. But all in all was about, I would say, a little over $30,000 putting together the number of musicians and artists and sound crew, and as well as a number of the landscaping things. We've talked about all the free dirt, but there was also a number of landscaping costs and putting in some electrical and some different things there this past year. So a number of those kind of things, creating, I think, a beautiful space and spaces here on our church grounds. But I just want to publicly, again, just sort of share the thanks to this congregation for the many ways in putting together, I think, just kind of a wonderful expression of our values. I think I shared a few of these stories on the midweek update, if any of you saw them, so I won't share them all again, but just people who came here that day. Lila was telling a great story as she was on the grounds out there that day, and someone came around and met Lila and said, "You're our song leader, aren't you?" And someone who's watched our live stream and came over from Ohio, first time they had been here in person, to share in the day and recognize Lila as she did this morning as our song leader. And I know some people who traveled from a couple states away who came here as well to experience the day, and were just kind of taken aback by the number of different ways that our values are represented here, from the solar panels, as we've talked about, to the stickers on our door about weapons and what to do with them before entering. So a number of different expressions, the peace cranes that were here and are outside. So anyway, just another thanks to this community for putting that together. Just also wanted to note that I went through with Bev Eikenberry from our congregation a 16-hour Kingian nonviolence training through On Earth Peace. And I'll just, Kyle, can we put those, well, yeah, sure. There we go, that one. Yeah, just want to let people know, this was put on the live stream, but if you didn't see it here this morning when you came in, want to let people know that the district, I'm working with a group that is hosting an opportunity for people to receive this same kind of 16-hour training. If you remember, during Kurt's sabbatical time, Matt Gwynn shared with us as one of the messages on Who is My Neighbor about this effort that On Earth Peace was having to try to train 1,000 people in the year through this training process. And having gone through it, I can say it is a very worthwhile time, but this will be a weekend at Camp Mac. There's other trainings, but if you'd like to participate in this, I know that so far there are 4 people from this congregation, but it'll be a district group, although if others are interested, I know it's been, Bev's been doing some work at sharing it in the schools as well. Anyone can come. It is free through sponsorship from the churches and different people in the district. You're able to give a donation for it to help pay it forward for other people to take the training, but it is free if you want to participate. It's a 3-day thing starting on Friday evening and going through Sunday. So that's November 10th through the 12th. And then the last thing that I'll share is just if you've seen an announcement about this, again, the Witness Commission has this upcoming event next Sunday evening. This opportunity, she is from Bethany Theological Seminary, is going to be sharing on issues around Christian nationalism. And so I invite you to that. She'll also be sharing a VIA at the university the next morning, Monday at the university, if you want to catch her there. It won't be the same presentation, but she will be sharing there. Any questions that you have?
Thank you, Seth. And Gwen, would you bring us your report?
Well, since I haven't been here the whole time since March, this should be a really short report, right? Make it quick. You all, if you've been present, have seen actually probably the fruits of some of my work, but what you probably haven't seen is the amount of collaborative energy that Seth and Amy and I have put in during this time of transition to work toward creating space for the congregation to transition healthfully. So that's meant that the three of us have spent a lot of time. We moved a round table into my office, and we've spent a lot of time around the table listening to each other, sharing ideas, working together. And then the things that you have seen within the congregation have been the fruit of that. So I started on August 1st, and while the first month was a lot of like onboarding, figuring out how things are done here at Manchester Church of the Brethren, the month of September was spent in articulating wild hopes and dreams, as evidenced by these lovely cranes. Now, as Julie mentioned, this really wasn't about strategic planning. I know sometimes it could feel like, oh, let's get all this down. And I will say, when we first envisioned this, we were thinking people would write a sentence. You all are prolific writers. So our transcribing became a larger process, but it also reflected really deep thinking and dreaming, free dreaming about like what could be and what's important to this congregation. A total of about, 360 responses came in over the course of the month, close to about 75 a week, 5 weeks. There were a number of different overarching themes, themes like around community, both internal and the broader North Manchester community. Children, young folks, and families, that was another theme that showed up a lot. The Manchester University and the relationship of this congregation to Manchester University. Outreach and service, both locally and further beyond this community. Peacemaking, similarly, both locally and beyond. Faith nurture, creation care, care for refugees, supporting diversity. It covered a lot of areas. There was this, I was just glancing through the list, and there was one, I intentionally didn't want to tell you what all it says, because I don't want somebody to say, I win, that one was mine, because they were all really thoughtful. But there was at one point, the one that jumped out to me was to heal our broken and wounded world. And there was this recognition that there, within this congregation, there is a sensitivity to the needs of the world and a desire to be about that healing. The other thing that was written between the lines and sometimes directly on the lines was what I would say articulated losses. And this is where the grief comes in. Very often the things that were articulated are things that have been brewing for quite a while. I would say certainly through the pandemic, things that were lost during the pandemic, and maybe some that would have been even before that. I noticed that people often responded talking about what their dreams were for the future, and it wasn't at all uncommon to say, I miss this. And my sense is that naming those things is the first step toward the grieving process and toward healing. Sometimes it means that you reinstate those things. Sometimes you say, I'm sad that these things are no longer here, and I look forward to what can come into the future. So those things were going on parallel, the dreaming and the grieving. And I think both of those things are important. As I've worked with this process, it became clear to me that, this is not strategic planning, but what this is preparing us all to think freely, to recognize that we are now at a different place than we were certainly 4 years ago, but even 4 months ago. So it is to like invite us to have the freedom to think outside of the box and to allow sensitivity to the Spirit in that space to kind of flow through so that eventually there can be strategic planning. But this is kind of like tending the soil in preparation for the planting, as I see it. The second thing that I've been working on is what we are in the middle of right now, which is this focus in worship on wisdom gifts for the journey. And I do really think of this as giving us tools for this time of change. And again, in this, I've been working collaboratively with Seth and Amy and David in terms of music stuff. And my hope is that, you know, some of these contemplative practices become things that are meaningful to you. And so that as a congregation, we are grounding ourselves for this time of transition. I certainly have noted in the last 2 months that you have 2 very skilled and gifted pastors in Seth and Amy. And I hope you all recognize that, because they really, they are so totally in. And they put so much of their lives into this work. And I'm sure that if you're not in this building all week, you don't necessarily see that. I see it. And I just want you to know what I see. And that is that you are very fortunate to have them. The second thing that I have seen consistently is that within this congregation, there is a deep generosity of spirit. And certainly a sincere willingness to work together, and that was evidenced by Sing Me Home, and it's evidenced in so many other things as well. But I commend you for the spirit with which you are engaging in this being community together during this season of change. So I will close with this haiku that I put on there. As I walked through Oxbow Park, actually, there was this pod that is, you know, this time of year they burst into this. Anyhow, seed, sprout, blossom, bloom, fade, decay, release, fly free, to begin again. And my hope for you all and for us together is that we give ourselves the freedom to begin again when the time is right. Do you have questions?
I want to say to you, Gwen, how fortunate we are to have you, and thank you for agreeing to come and be our interim pastor. I have a curiosity. I hope this isn't too personal a question, but what kind of schedule do you have? I know you're living in Goshen, and your husband is there, although we've seen him a couple of times. And how have you managed to work out being down here so much, but also living in Goshen?
That's a good question.
Very much time on the road, I wonder.
Just so that you all know, I'm usually here on Sundays, unless I have COVID or something. I work from home on Mondays. And then I come down Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And if all is well, I should be off on Friday and Saturday. And that, so far, we're still working on that. I will say that I do have this kind of pet peeve about congregations should be recognizing Sabbath, and you should have a day when the office is closed and nobody goes to work. And I may find that I harp on that more in the future, but because what happens is that as long as one pastor is working, there are emails flying or there are texts flying, and there is then never that time where you are qualitatively in a place of rest. So that might be something that I am learning from being in 2 different geographic places, the importance of creating time that is dormant so that there can be that freedom. But that will be, maybe that will show up on my next report. I don't know.
Other questions? Tina's sharp eye has noticed one.
And of course, it's Joy again. I am so thankful, Gwen, for what you do for us. It has been just outstanding. One of the changes I've noticed on a Sunday morning is all three of you, some Sunday mornings, doing the opening stuff together. I love that. That is so way cool. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. We certainly are doing that intentionally as a way of acknowledging that we see ourselves as a team. We are working together, and we are a team that's part of a bigger team. That is the whole of the congregation. So glad that it is well received. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Gwen. I know that Amy would love to hear from you about her report, to engage with you on anything that you're interested in to talk about in terms of her work and her report. So I'm not aware of any announcements, and I would turn to Jim for a closing prayer.
What's become clear to me today is our collective fidelity to our heritage. But as Julie said, not being, she didn't use this word, but I'll use it, chained to it. And that we interpret that for our time and in our place. From ChatGPT, which helped Debbie and I move through the Italian mountains thinking about St. Francis, to the many ways we engage what we have now to make our heritage alive. So no surprise, this is a benediction from St. Francis. And when you hear the word you, I would hope he means we, or us, because I do. So hear this Franciscan benediction. May God bless you with discomfort, at easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that we may live deep within your heart. May God bless you with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that you may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May God bless you with tears to shed for those who suffer pain, rejection, hunger, and war, so that you may reach out your hand to comfort them and to turn their pain to joy. And may God bless you with enough foolishness to believe that you can make a difference in this world, so that you can do what others claim cannot be done, to bring justice and kindness to all our children and the poor. Amen.
And with that, our meeting is adjourned.